Hello and welcome to my living room. Now you might be thinking, Julian, you're not wearing any makeup and you're in your living room. This must be part of the read-along. Well, no, it's not. We're actually doing 2 book reviews today and I just couldn't be bothered to put on makeup. I need to film something for Monday, but you all know I would rather be playing the Mass Effect Remastered Edition. See, I'm already wearing Garrus. I am ready. But first I have to film book review. And I thought about splitting these 2 up and doing 1 review for each, but honestly I think they work better as like a 2-for-1 kind of deal. I'll try to have things timestamps below if you are only interested in one of these books and not the other. Both of these are closed circle thrillers, which means that they are thrillers that take place in one location because characters are trapped there for whatever reason. It's my favorite kind of thriller. I love those. So the first one that we are going to be reviewing is called No Exit. I have it on my laptop over here, the synopsis. Notes for one are in my book, notes for the other are over here. Now, let's check out the synopsis, shall we? A kidnapped little girl locked in a stranger's van. No help for miles. What would you do? On her way to Utah to see her dying mother, college student Darby Thorne gets caught in a fierce blizzard in the mountains of Colorado. With the roads impassable, she is forced to wait out the storm in a remote highway rest stop. Inside are some vending machines, a coffee maker, and 4 complete strangers. Desperate to find a signal to call home, Darby goes back out into the storm and makes a horrifying discovery. In the back of the van, parked next to her car, a little girl is locked in an animal crate. Who is the child? Why has she been taken? And how can Darby save her? There's no cell phone reception, no telephone, and no way out. One of her fellow travelers is a kidnapper, but which one? Trapped in an increasingly dangerous situation with a child's life and her own on the line, Darby must find a way to break the girl out of the van and escape. But who can she trust? So that sounds pretty enticing, right? Especially if you love thrillers where characters are trapped somewhere. This book knows exactly what it wants to be and has absolutely no interest in being anything more. This is a thriller in the purest sense. If this were a movie, it would be a cheesy popcorn flick. It would be not even the summer blockbuster, it would be one of the smaller, like, blockbuster-esque movies that came out, like, around the same time. I can't even think of the movie equivalent, but you know what I'm talking about. Those sort of cheap thrillers where, like, the main character is just sort of your average woman and she's trapped somewhere and there's a killer. And just that sort of level of cheesy intensity is what this book brings to the table, and it is not interested in surprising you or going deeper or doing anything but just being entertaining. It means to do one of the many jobs of books, and that is to entertain the reader. So if you're looking for a book that you can kind of turn off your brain and just enjoy the ride, then this one might be for you. However, if you were hoping for a complex, twisty, thoughtful, unpredictable thriller, this ain't it, sis. If you are at all familiar with thrillers, including movies, you will predict every single step that this book is going to take. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as that is the kind of book that you are down for reading. Like, when I read this, I was just coming out of a reading slump, and it was nice to have something so mindless and actiony to just enjoy. I saw every fucking twist coming, but sometimes you just want a book like that because you do need to just, like, shake off the cobwebs and get out of a slump before you can read something a little deeper again. If you are not at all familiar with thrillers and you wanted to use this like your gateway thriller, I think this could potentially work. It definitely feels like it keeps moving. She discovered who was responsible for the girl in the van much sooner than I thought she was going to. I thought she was going to spend more time trying to suss out who it was, but she figured it out quickly. But then the majority of the book is actually her knowing who the kidnapper is, the kidnapper knowing that she knows pretty quickly, and like the cat and mouse game that they play. I say cat and mouse as though it is a clever, intense game, when in reality she's not the brightest bulb, our main character, but she's got heart, and that's what matters. And so she's dealing with this kidnapper And of course she's making every mistake that will keep the plot rolling along. So it's like she tries to do a thing, but oh no, she forgot this, or oh no, this happened. To just keep the tension in the plot moving. You definitely feel that if she were a slightly more competent character, she might have got out of this sooner. But honestly, I didn't dislike her character. She is a fairly standard character for this kind of thing. She's just sort of your average Joe woman getting caught in this situation. She's kind of got those final girl vibes. And she is proactive. So I appreciate that about her, even if she is kind of bad at everything she tries, at least she is always trying something. There is never a question in her head about whether she's going to save this girl or not. She's like, I see a girl in a cage. I am going to save her. I just need to figure out how. And granted, she does bumblefuck her way through that how pretty badly sometimes, but I do like that she is proactive, even if she's just not very good at it. The other characters are incredibly flat. The bad guy's bad. The other characters, like, there are twists about all of the characters, but nothing, you know, earth-shattering or surprising, really. I wish there had been more. I suppose I do and I don't. On the one hand, if there had been more characters, there maybe could have been more twists and turns involving characters instead of the main character just making mistakes again and again. But also, I'm not entirely certain this author could handle more characters. Still, I prefer when there are just like a few more characters, because 4 is pretty limited. You're fairly limited in who you could guess that the kidnapper is, and you're pretty limited in like people that the main character could potentially have as allies or future enemies. So it's kind of not as fun trying to figure out where everybody falls and what all their secrets are when there are so few of them, and also when they are so incredibly one-dimensional. None of them are deep. They have twists about them, but that doesn't make them deep characters. And like even the villain, I'm not saying you have to like humanize a villain. I'm not saying we have to feel sorry for the person that kidnaps a little girl and puts her in a cage, but it would have been nicer if it wasn't so stereotypical. Like, you've seen one horror movie villain, you've seen them all. Kind of a situation here. This book also has the problem with the child character. She's supposed to be 7, but most of the time she acts at least 12. I didn't ever believe that she was 7. She's very mature, so if you're one of those people who doesn't like when kids act more like tiny adults in books, then this will probably drive you crazy. Yeah, she only acted like a kid very occasionally when she needed to for the plot. I gave No Exit 3 stars on Goodreads. 3 for me is just sort of, this is an average book. This is nothing special, but I enjoyed my time with it. It probably is realistically more of a 2-star book, but because I personally was like coming out of a slump and I just needed something mindless to just enjoy, this fit the bill pretty well. But like I said, unless you're in the mood for that, this book is not that good. Oh, the writing. How's the writing? Fine. It's not skillful. It's not graceful. I actually did consider DNFing towards the beginning because the writing does feel fairly amateur, and there are a lot of like little things, little bits of polish that could have been done to this story to make the writing better. You know, the classic stuff. There's a lot of filtering, a lot of unnecessary sentences or things that could be reworked or things that read very clunkily. But I was able to kind of get over it and get past it and just enjoy the ride. The simplicity of the writing style kind of fits with the simplicity of this plot. The craft is mediocre. Mediocre but entertaining, pretty much encapsulates every quality of this book. So those are my thoughts on No Exit. Have you read it? Share your thoughts. What is your favorite closed circle thriller? I'm always on the lookout for more. I feel like I've read pretty much all of them, but I hope, like, if you know of one that's maybe more obscure, please drop it in the comments below. Now for this next one, I do have notes in my notebook, and this is going to be possibly the first time ever that I am getting a video review out before I even have the review on Goodreads, because I finished this book yesterday, and I haven't even managed to get a Goodreads review out. So this one is called All Your Twisted Secrets. It is a YA thriller, and again it is closed circle with characters trapped somewhere, and one of them may be a murderer. Let's read the synopsis, shall we? What do the queen bee, star athlete, valedictorian, stoner, loner, and music geek all have in common? They were all invited to a scholarship dinner, only to discover that it's a trap. Someone has locked them in a room with a bomb, a syringe filled with poison, and a note saying they have an hour to pick someone to kill, or else everyone dies. Amber Prescott is determined to get her classmates and herself out of the room alive, but it might be easier said than done. No one knows how they're all connected or who would want them dead. As they retrace the events over the past year that might have triggered their captor's ultimatum, it becomes clear that everyone is hiding something. And with the clock ticking down, confusion turns to fear as they race to answer the biggest question: who would they choose to die? This book 100% struck me as the author looked at that famous quote from Alfred Hitchcock and was like, that's it. That's the book. Though I do feel that there is a natural progression from this quote that I would take and the book also takes, and that is, not only is there a bomb under the table and you show the audience the bomb, but you also show the characters the bomb, and that's when things really get intense. So we've got all of these teenage characters trapped in a conference room in a basement of, like, hotel, essentially. The hotel is closed, which none of them noticed, and they go to a conference room in the basement for what they think is going to be a scholarship dinner, only to find themselves locked in with a bomb and a syringe full of poison. Now, this does make it seem like they don't know each other, but actually they all do know each other, and they have fairly entwined backstories, and that's the thing that this book mostly does. You've got the present time with all of the characters trapped in the conference room, and then we make frequent and lengthy jumps back in time with the main character. This is single POV, with the main character who is Amber, the musician, to the lead up to the situation that they are in. And honestly, I think that is where this book stumbles the most, because there is so much, like, tension and not necessarily action because they're trapped somewhere, but they're all just, like, freaking out and trying to figure out what's going on and trying to figure out why they're here and how to escape. And then we just unceremoniously jump back in time, and all of that tension is completely lost. And it took a really long time in this story for me to care about what was happening in the past, because it goes so far back, so you get, like, the full backstory of Amber, that it was kind of boring and jarring and pace-killing to jump back to those past scenes. I really wish that the author had found a way to integrate it more seamlessly into the flow of the story. Maybe having Amber stop to remember these things, like, everyone's freaking out around her and maybe she's, like, can't help but think back on how she met these people, or how, like, this all started, or maybe how she started pursuing the scholarship, like, anything really to guide us back in time, instead of just being like, okay, they're here, they're freaking out, they're trapped, boom, past scene, just plopped there. Tension, murderer. It did get better as we got further, and I'm not entirely sure if that's because the past scenes became more relevant as we got closer to what's happening to the characters right now, or because I just got used to it, of the back and forth jumping. It also kind of fucked with the timeline in your brain, because the characters have, like, an hour, there's a timer on the bomb, and it's like an hour, to free themselves or decide who gets to take the poison. But because we keep jumping back in time, the timer doesn't feel real, because we, the reader, are slowing down so frequently for the past scenes that every time we jump back, it feels like way more time should have passed in the room where everyone's trapped. But it hasn't, and it's just kind of jarring, and it doesn't completely work. I think it should have been reworked to flow a bit better. I will say that I felt like these characters were pretty well characterized. You got a pretty good feel of who they are. It's just too bad that they're really boring people. But they're just so focused on getting into colleges and schoolwork and school and their social lives. And I've been an adult for quite a while now, and it's just like, that stuff doesn't matter. And it's really all these characters have got, which again perhaps makes them more realistic teens, but they are quite boring, at least in the beginning. We do get to know them a bit better as the book goes on, and I don't know if Stockholm Syndrome set in, but eventually I wasn't quite as bored with them as I was at the beginning. Let's talk about the writing right away. This author falls into a trap that I also struggle with in my own writing. It's something I've been working on with myself, and that is a balance of when to just use said and when to describe the character as doing something. So for example, we'll use a character named Fred, who I have just made up. You could be like, "Give me back my sandwich," Fred said. Or you could go, "Give me back my sandwich." Fred reached for her, trying to snatch his sandwich back. I tend to rely too much on the Fred reached for the sandwich kind of things after dialogue versus just using said. I find that the best flow happens when there is a mixture of just using said and also giving us characters' actions. This author has the same problem that I struggle with of, I think she used said by itself like 5 times in this entire book. The characters were always doing something after dialogue, and it was often like stuff we didn't need to know. I'm a very visual reader, and I do love knowing what the characters are doing. I do want to know what they're doing with their bodies and their facial expressions and everything like that. That's also why I write that way. But we honestly don't need to know every tiny gesture, every tiny facial expression. And again, this is something I self-admit to. I've done it so bad in some of my fiction that I even annoyed myself going back through it. So it's weird telling you guys what I struggle with, because now I know you're going to be looking for it in my books and being like, oh, she hasn't improved to my satisfaction, that's for sure. Anyway, this author used said like 5 times, and it got really kind of obnoxious. Again, I got used to it, but even toward the end, I was like, I do not need to know that she's twirling her hair around her finger, or applying lip gloss, or like blinking. Like every single tiny body motion that these characters do does not need to be recorded. So with a book like this, it is always fun to think about the ways that you would try to escape. And even though the characters didn't try a lot of the things that I would have tried, I was able to be like, well, they're teenagers. But they do try to escape through some windows. They're in a basement conference room, so the windows are up high and they're small. And also the windows have bars on them. So they break the glass, but then they can't get through the bars. And all I could think about was,
see? I told you so.
No, you said wet shirt don't break, not piss shirt bend bar.
But if you are one of the people who does come up with a lot of ideas that the characters then inevitably don't try, sometimes you might feel a little frustrated. Like there were times where I was like, okay, we really need to just experiment with this and try it before we decide that it's impossible. The teenage relationships in this book did feel pretty realistic. The main character is caught sort of between 2 worlds, where she has found her way in to the popular group. And she was never like super unpopular, but now she's found her way into the popular group, and she has to try to keep her old friendships as well as maintain these new friendships. And it's, I think, a pretty realistic dynamic of the way that teenagers do struggle with their social groups and how ridiculously important social groups are to teenagers. And it was also nice to not just have the stereotypical, I'm a nerd and everyone hates me main character. As an adult reading a YA thriller or any YA book, I have officially reached the point where I agree with the parents a lot of the time. That's what happens when you get old, folks. You start to see the parent side of things. The main character wants to go to school for music. She wants to score movies when she grows up. That is her dream. And she's not sure she can get full rides to any of the big schools that she wants to go to, so she wants to take out student loans. But her father doesn't want her to do that. He doesn't want her to be in debt for essentially the rest of her life. And so he's trying to convince her to maybe go to a smaller school. She doesn't want to. You know, she's like, I need this to follow my dream of making movie scores. What, you don't think I'm good enough to make it in Hollywood? And I'm like, honey, being good enough doesn't matter. There are so many ridiculously talented people in this world that are good enough that still aren't going to get that job in Hollywood. So it doesn't matter if you're good enough. It doesn't matter if you're the best. Luck has to be on your side, and honestly, go to the cheaper school. You know, like, I'm an adult now, and I'm just like, no, I'm an adult and I'm a creative, so you guys know I write books. And I know how difficult it is to be a creative in the world, and how little it matters how good you are. You can go get a big fancy education to do the art that you want to do, and probably never ever see any like big time success from that. So yeah, this is a really roundabout way of saying I'm at that stage in my life where I'm agreeing with the dad. Now we get on to talking about the ending of this book. The ending was bonkers. Just prepare to suspend every ounce of disbelief that you have. I was reading along and I was like, you know, it's a bit of a weird scenario, obviously, that these characters find themselves in. That's not very realistic. But the amount of disbelief I had to suspend to enjoy this book was minimal. But then the ending happened and I was just like, what? Just like so much. And it used one of my very least favorite thriller tropes. And I'm so mad about it that I do want to talk about it, so I'm going to put a spoiler warning up here. So as soon as the spoiler warning goes away, that means it is safe to go back to listening. I'm going to warn you again, this is a book ending spoiler. This is the spoilers. Alright? Are we clear? Is everybody gone? Book ending spoiler happening now. The one who has trapped them all in the room is Amber, the main character. I had thought that maybe this was a possibility, but then I dismissed it because we never see any side of Amber in all of her flashbacks that would make me think that she would come up with this and implement it. It is just not ever visible in her personality, in my opinion, any point in this book. And also, like I said, this book uses one of my very least favorite thriller tropes, and that is the unreliable narrator who you cannot guess is an unreliable narrator. Like, you can guess it just by throwing out random ideas because you've read thrillers before, but you are not given, like, really any decent clues within the text that maybe she is being dishonest. As you get further in the story and she is mistreated more and more, you are like, okay, well, I wonder what's going to happen with the fact that she is being mistreated more and more. But never did it make sense for her to be the one who orchestrated this elaborate thing just to teach the bully a lesson. I despise that trope in thrillers where you are with the main character, you are in their head, you are even maybe seeing their flashbacks, and it is never revealed until the twist in any way that they are behind something. It doesn't have to be overt, it doesn't have to be over the top, it doesn't have to be like all fingers point to them, but it should be believable when we get to the point where, oh, she orchestrated it all. I should be able to go and look back at this character that I have known through this entire book and be like, yeah, I could see it. She is not the type to come up with this elaborate scheme with all of these moving parts, with the food, with the hotel, with the, the rope to close the door that she attached to her ankle. Like, none of this fit her personality. I was more expecting her sister, who we found out committed suicide, to have actually not been dead and come back and pull this off before I suspected the main character. Okay, spoiler over. Whew, that makes me heated. And that's why I don't know exactly how I'm going to score this book, because it was sitting very pleasantly at a 3, a book that I enjoy but isn't great. And then the ending happened, and the twist happened, and it used one of my least favorite thriller tropes, and now I'm thinking I want to give it 2 stars, even though I eventually did come to enjoy myself while I was listening, and it was very, very listenable. Like, I was never wanting to be listening to something else while I was listening to this, and I was happy to turn it back on every time I got to work and could listen to my book again. So those are my thoughts on All Your Twisted Secrets. Have you read it? What did you think about it? Also, what are some of your least favorite thriller tropes? Forget favorite. Share your least favorite thriller tropes in the comments below. One of the other ones that I don't like that wasn't involved in this story is the multiple personality reveal. Don't like that one either. Thank you so much for watching. If you need a little break from thrillers and you would like to read a fantasy romance, you can check out my book, The Wolf and the Hawk. It's a romance with a plot, so if you like a little kissing and a little killing, it might be the book for you. I also have tons of other book reviews here on this channel, so feel free to browse around. They're all in a nice playlist for you. I'm sure I have reviewed something else you've heard of. And if you can't get enough of me, you can also find me over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get exclusive content not seen here on the regular channel. And of course, at other tiers, you get other awesome rewards, like hand-drawn postcards every 3 months. Those are really popular. You should check them out. Plus, patrons help me to publish my own books. If you want to communicate with me, you can find all of my social media linked in the doobly-doo. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Okay, so I'm pretty sure you've seen lots of cool things in your life, but nothing nearly as cool as my patrons, like Belle, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Ray, Artemis, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, Anna W., Anna C., Light Julie, OS, Hidden Glade, Persephone, Kit, and Lennox. Like, how could you possibly have seen anything as cool as that? You haven't. They say I'm a dangerous man. Better run fast as you can. Don't you look back. Every bone in my body's bad. Fire burning, the skies are turning black. They say I'm a dangerous man.